Namaskara. I don't know where to start with, but I have to start with a few corrections. My apologies. My junior is sitting here, so he knows. I am not and will never be a public interest litigator. And there is a reason for this. Fortunately, I think I suffer from no savior complex. Because I think it's time that our causes are freed from personality cults. And I think we have paid the price for following a personality cult for over a decade now. I'll just leave it at that. Second, in the incidents of the last 2 to 3 weeks that have been happening in the eastern neighborhood of Bharat, and incidents or instances that have triggered the need for such platforms sometimes make me wonder. This is Bangalore, you understand Tamil, so tolerate my Tamil, it's okay. I'll switch to that language as often as possible. I keep wondering, should I continue with my practice or should I jump into this? What am I supposed to do is the question that I often go through. There are harrowing instances where sometimes I go through questions which I don't think anybody else can answer because nobody can relate to my journey. It's unfortunately a lonely journey in that sense. The one thing I've realized is that if I were to give up my professional practice as a hard-nosed commercial litigator, underscore the words commercial litigator because that's what I do, public interest litigation doesn't interest me even remotely, is it gives me the financial independence and, let's call it, intellectual or integrity independence to speak my mind without having to depend on anyone else. It's contrary to all the obligations that are imposed on a Brahmin. And unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe that is the way or the model that I can subscribe to. Perhaps because the society is not conducive enough for a Brahmin to follow all the Shastric obligations. So I have no other option but to do this. Second, as much as I would want to be part of islands of purity such as this, there is dirt outside. And I have to be part of the dirt to deal with it. So I have to be a man of the world, underscore the word man here, man of the world for me to deal with the rest of the world. So there is no other option. This is not about me. I have to clarify a few things so that I set the tone and the context of what I'm about to discuss with you. One of the reasons I made the transition from engineering to law was to understand the system very well, including the dirt in the system. If you think that everything that I've taken up as a cause as part of my litigation practice has always been honest, no, it's not. It's a lawyer's game at the end of the day. I'm a lawyer's lawyer. I won't even beat around the bush on that. I will not subscribe to any hypocritical positions on that. Second, the other reason I took up the profession was to present a very clear position on issues and causes that are dear to me. Not because I want to protect them for the sake of dharma. I don't think I have the standing or the understanding. I'm doing it merely to pass on a way of life that I've grown up with and benefited from to my children. That's the only selfish interest. Everything else is incidental and ancillary to that primary core selfish interest. So that articulation is to ensure that when my child goes out, he is not bullied for wearing the namam or the tilak or the tika or sporting a shikha or having a cross belt across his chest. So I'm doing this to make it safer for my child, period. And because I'm so clear and unabashed about my selfish motives, people cannot at the very least say that there is something else to this game and there is some other agenda that he's trying to push. This is my very clear agenda. I will push it without any degree of shame. Two, I think he was underplaying it, Mr. Ram Prasad. I could have listened to him for another 45 minutes. Because I don't know what is intellectualism if not what he put on display for the last half an hour. Very clear in what he said. As a practitioner, he knows the sampradaya that he represents. He understands, unfortunately, he is forced to understand the politics of that particular game, which he is currently a part of. 3, he has exactly explained to you how that game works. So what is it that I can present in terms of value addition to what he has already presented? please understand the risk that he has taken by sticking his neck out. Please understand that. People don't realize that. Here I can confidently say, please also understand the kind of risks that people like us have to take. The only thing that ultimately validates this risk is when we see not the government responding, but when the society responds. Because the government is a creature of incentive. Society responds because it actually has a beating heart. And that's one of the reasons that I put more faith in the society than in the government, so that pressure is put on the government through the society, because this will last longer. This is a slower game, but a slow burn rocket will travel faster, or at least longer. So I am hoping that these investments, I couldn't have thought of a platform such as this a couple of years ago. I don't think this would have been possible at all remotely for multiple reasons. One, it's a function of awareness. Second, it's a function of guts plus awareness. Today you have it. My limited disagreement with Mr. Ram Prasad is only on one aspect, and that's something I have learned on my own in the last few years. So last year, I think December 2022, I was at this blessed institution called Kalakshetra. Now I'll leave it to people to understand what I'm getting at. Bharata Muni's Natya Shastram is not welcome in Kalakshetra anymore. Apparently there is something called Koothunulu, which is apparently an interpolation in Tamil which somebody pulled out of the blue, God knows from where. Apparently that is older than Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, and that has to be taught. And somebody like Sri Bharat Gupta, who is the living legend on Natya Shastra, is not welcome in Kalakshetra anymore. So to address that problem, since my job is to play the Narada Muni everywhere, I was called there. Sir, please come, set fire and go. I said, okay, I'll come. And this was before the controversy started there, because the rumblings of the controversy had already started then. So when I went there, I could see a lot of faces which are wondering, what is this hate monger doing here? I said, mission accomplished 50%. And during the process of understanding how this entire artistic ecosystem has been infiltrated, it is not recent, sir. In fact, it's been going on before independence. I then started reading up. It's been going on ever since somebody came here to harvest souls. Because they realized that those institutions which actually have the heart space and the mind space of the public need to be infiltrated. And therefore, all traditions related to the temple must be infiltrated. And they must be secularized, de-Hinduized, and let me say the word actually, de-Sanskritized. So the process of de-Sanskritization and the process of secularization have happened over the last 200 years, according to me, starting from at least the 1750s. So the battle right now is to prevent the concept called Bharat, which is the product of Sanskritization over thousands of years. There's nothing wrong in saying that. What connects Bengali and Tamil, Telugu and all these languages across the country is the smattering of Sanskrit in their vocabulary, at least to the extent of 40% in the languages. That is the presence of Sanskrit and the Sanskritic effect, which then decides that the only way you connect this civilization is by creating a culture which does not kill the local, but ties up the multiple locals to create a civilization. Now, what the other side has done is to pick apart that super layer, one by one, thread by thread, strand by strand, so that the local is given primacy, and then locals will start fighting with the other local. The tentative title of my third book is precisely for this reason. It's called The Journey from Bharat to India, the Cultural Balkanization of Bharat and Constitutionalism. All these roads lead to the same destination, which is to misappropriate and prevent you from claiming your culture, your compositions. So it starts with yoga as well. It comes to food. It comes to all sorts of practices and the arts as well. The idea is to basically say, your culture has contributed nothing, and all that you have managed to do is to appropriate existing arts from the subalterns, and the Brahmins have effectively appropriated it as part of their Sanskritic conspiracy. That's what we will be told. And that's what is being told at this point. A lot of people come and ask me, why don't our gurus speak up as much? Why is it that we have to speak so much? What are our Dharma Gurus doing? You know, the fact that we still have remnants of the islands of purity is because of them. Because we have lost the ability to observe austerities and anusthana to the rigor to which they can. They have to continue doing that. They have to protect that institution from attacks from the entire ecosystem. They have to deal with the government. In places like Sringeri and other places, they have to deal with the rising change in demographics, right? They know for a fact that a lot of other institutions are coming up where money is being thrown left, right, and center to grab lands. They have to do that and speak up also. So what will you do? So what will the rest of us do? Tindi Veedi at KR-Puram or Seshadripuram? I'm sorry, I have to be sarcastic here. Because I'm trying to say that if you want this to survive and if you want to really pass this on to the next generation, you have to stand up and make yourself count. Artists like Sri Ram Prasad must never be found wanting when they speak up or perform, both of them being equally important. Please, and I am going to make this appeal, which he will not because of who he is. I will make this appeal. There is something called as right and wrong. There's no point in saying that everything is in shades of gray. There is no such thing as black and white. In the context of a Sampradayik art form which has a very clear bhakti origin, if you deviate from the existing path, it is wrong, period. Second, as he rightly said, and I'll give examples from history on this, I have severe disagreements with Arya Samajis, but I will respect them for two things. When they decided that they do not want to subscribe to the traditional notions of Sanatana Dharma, the honorable thing that they did was to set up alternative institutions. They did not infiltrate our institutions. Because they said, we disagree with you, we will set up our own institutions, let the public decide what they wish to subscribe to. Ultimately, the proof of the pudding is in public acceptance, period. If some member of the public says, sorry, I like jazz, Carnatic or Carnatic fusion better, go there, no problem. Keep it separate. Do not take away our platforms where they sit. That's it. So which is why, as long as you inhabit this ecosystem, what you do is wrong. You want to make it right, create an alternative ecosystem. No problem. Then you're correct within the argument that you have presented. You can't hope to present the validity of your case on the rules that have been established for this tradition. I'm therefore playing a double game here where I'm also making a case for them. I'm saying, go ahead, live the way you want to. Just don't call yourself traditional performers, period. When you do that, let us see which lasts longer. Because what you want to do is to cash in on the goodwill of the tradition to pass off what you're doing, which is not traditional. Because you want to free ride on the coattails of the goodwill that has been earned by this tradition for thousands of years. My junior is smiling because this is a trademark argument that we make typically in IP infringement cases. As far as this tradition is concerned, if you want to use, let's say, the musical backdrop of it, go ahead, I can't stop you from doing it because nobody can claim rights over that. But on compositions, compositions belong to a particular sampradaya. Those specific compositions, according to me, subscribe to particular rules. You will not be allowed to perform this if you don't subscribe to those rules. Now, there is no legal way of enforcing this because he will say free speech, artistic expression, there's nothing that you can do. What can you do? Stop consuming. You can't stop him from producing, but you can stop him from being consumed. I am using the leftist game against them, by the way, because that's what they do to us. If the platform says these are our rules and they apply it uniformly, no problem. But when certain academies throw their weight behind this, according to me, heresy, what do you do then? Which is why I'm making a broader proposition here. I had this conversation with a few leading artists a few months ago. And I'm going to present this in favor of Bengaluru here. Their arrogance comes from the dominance of a particular academy in a city. Shift the base. shift the base and let Karnataka become the place where traditional artists from across the world converge. If the inheritors of a tradition don't know the value of a tradition, they don't deserve to have the tradition. Because Dharma says, after 3 generations, if you don't value Sandhya Vandanam, you will not have the right to wear the punal anymore after that. I am applying the same principle, which is to say we have given you enough opportunities. Feedback has come to you from multiple channels to make amends, change your ways, respect the sentiments of the Rasika. But if you choose not to do that, Chinna Kodu, Periya Kodu, I am drawing the Periya Kodu here, period. And therefore, I am clearly saying, in every way possible, I will support this transition, monetarily and otherwise. Every academy must know that it survives on the goodwill of traditional Rasikas and Rasikas alone. And therefore, Bangalore must be open enough to embrace people from Andhra Pradesh, from Tamil Nadu, and any other part of the world. And the only bottom line being, please respect the tradition. That's it. If I have to choose between suboptimal talent and allegiance to tradition, where do you think I will go? Allegiance to tradition. Because I can work on talent, but I can't work on a Vikrut Buddhi. That Kurkumule has no solution. Because that is the fundamental trait of a Charvaka, who doesn't understand the value of Veda and Shabda Pramana. There is no point in engaging with him or her. So, work towards this tangible initiative. You have a platform today, throw your weight behind it. The way of throwing your weight behind it is very tangible. 1, attendance. 2, support. 3, vocal support. Stop being silent. If you belabor under the delusion that Dharma will protect itself, no, it does not. Dharma will protect itself, which means it will go out of Bharat and survive. Nobody will be there to protect you. Please don't think you're protecting Hinduism at all. You're protecting your identity as a Hindu. There are Russians who are waiting, Germans who are waiting, Africans who are waiting, Hawaiians who are waiting, who have established temples. Please go and see how they chant the Rudram. And you'll be shamed and shocked. Unbelievable. So the Ayyappa temple in Lagos, Nigeria is run by an African Brahmin. His name is Govinda. The way he takes even Vahana Puja seriously, unbelievable. So, which is why I say it's futile and stupid to operate under any savior complex. Bharat has to take a conscious decision whether it wants to be the epicenter and the lodestone for Dharma or not, because if it chooses to abandon Dharma, Dharma will abandon it and find a different place. Secondly, why is tradition important? Why is tradition important? Because unless and until this is explained, I think this fundamental point is missing. That is the missing block of the delta here. The artificial fight that you will see in all these conversations is tradition is against individual will, tradition is conservatism, therefore tradition is against innovation. This is what you will be told. That there is no room for individual contribution because tradition is like a suffocating cage. Going by that logic, why do you have rules for chess? So, has the existence of rules in a game such as chess prevented the player from using different kinds of strategies and innovating within those rules? Name a sport which does not have rules or which has rules or which says, no, in this thing anything can happen, except for, of course, freestyle boxing or whatever it is, MMA. Other than that, there are rules. Has it stopped, let's say, the production or creation of people who showcase their individual brilliance despite the existence of the rules? It is much more, I respect a person who knows how to innovate staying within the rules than someone who's operating without the rules, because then there are no constraints whatsoever. Then where is the buddhi? Because the room is automatically open for more play. Where is the genius? Genius lies in operating within those rules. Second, therefore, I am telling the young audience, if you want to look for something that is glamorous and cool, look for people who innovate within the tradition, not outside of it. Second, tradition at the end of the day is not just meant for longevity or continuity. Think of it as the completion of a trial and error process, where somebody has already gone through the pain of experimenting and has said, for generations we have tried to crack this code, now this is where it stands. Whether it is Shastra or tradition in the realm of arts, that is the fundamental principle of saying, you wish to reinvent the wheel, you'll reinvent the wheel for another 1,000 years. And in the process, the social cost will be paid by the society. We have gone through that process. So if we are making it easy for you, try and stick to this. And with time, its value will be revealed through first-hand experience. 3, I genuinely don't know as a performer, and perhaps you can shed light on this, whether it's possible to constantly be in throes and raptures of bhakti each time you render a composition. I don't know how that works. However, the hope is that it will trigger a spark in someone. That we don't just produce performers of existing kritis, but you create the next Tyagaraja. I haven't foreclosed that possibility, notwithstanding my respect for his immortal status. So please don't get me wrong. This is not an insult to that icon. The only thing is, if you're a part of Hindu Sampradaya, then you realize that it is possible to come out with the next icon. And the hope is that the seeds of this tradition will find the right candidate or target at some point. I'll give you a different example just to make this argument. So when people cry over destruction of temples, I understand it, I relate to it, my heart bleeds for it. But I am more interested in the destruction of a way of life as opposed to an institution. Because the hope is, if you keep that way of life alive and that institution alive, at some stage you'll produce someone who can recreate the Veda itself if all the Vedas are lost. So therefore, tradition in the realm of sacred arts is in the hope that you produce, according to me, the next icon. And second, I haven't seen a single tradition or let's say single system survive which operates on a laissez-faire system, because after a point it loses vitality because it has no sense of rules or identity. The existence of a rule is imputation of an identity to a particular stream of art or profession. The third important point, and I'll stop it at this. What we have been seeing since 1857 is every profession has been secularized. Previously, work as worship was literal, in the sense every profession would have a deity which is associated with it. It would have detailed rituals, it will have a Kuladevata, it will have an institution and a temple. Every profession, for God's sakes, not just one. Which is why, when a few French travelers had come here, in fact missionaries came here, they understood the Varnashrama Dharma system better than us. They actually said, there is no one Brahmin, there is a Brahmin in each profession. Because they said it's not a vertical system, it's a horizontal system, wherein the priest will have to respect the person who is an expert in his subject at the end of the day, because he is seen as the Brahmin in his profession who has achieved proficiency in that area. Therefore, from 1857, especially after the War of Independence, the first War of Independence, the British men understood this. And they said, let's break the relationship between professions and the sacred and secularize professions fully. Now, what you see over the years is ethics have gone for a toss, education has become commercial. There is not a single profession where you can hope or bank on the fact that there is some degree of conscience and self-regulation at work which will prevent somebody from acting on his greed. Tell me you honestly believe that the Hippocratic Oath is actually working in the realm of medicine. Because it is merely, according to me, it's just a ritual which has lost its essence. So the trick of Hindu Dharma has been sacralize every profession, which means give it a sacred character so that everybody realizes that on the performance of his duty to the best of his abilities lies the rest of the balance for the society. And second, if you desacralize it, the degeneration that it goes through is almost irreversible, which is what we are seeing at this point. Now, what has happened is that desacralization, secularization has started affecting arts. It first affected all your secular professions. Then it went after the priestly profession, where now everybody says you just have to crack an examination and become that. For Sthapati, apparently there is one examination that you have to crack according to the Tamil Nadu government, and you become a Sthapati. So apparently all those generations, where the son would never be the master until the father's passing, and he would be the father's first apprentice, all of them were idiots according to them. Where they would observe rituals, they would observe fasts before they start work on a particular sculpture, all of that has been rendered secondary. That is exactly what you're being told now, when a certain gentleman gives an interview to say, it's perfectly fine to have a drink of scotch before you perform Carnatic music. He says that on NDTV several years ago. He gave the red flag several years ago. Most of them didn't realize it. Exactly. So a lot of people actually thought, then hopefully he follows the same thing when it comes to his food habits. I'll leave it at that. Please understand this. Most people thought that after a certain award was given, the transition started. They didn't realize that he was selected for that award several years before that because he was identified. That here is a potential deviant who can be given a further incentive to continue deviating from the path. I remember watching that interview when I was in engineering or in law school. This is the mid-2000s. And I was asking myself, what is happening here? This gentleman used to perform traditionally. Out of the blue, what is the transition here? What triggered this particular transition? And I slowly started noticing a few things. All of this is never individual. As he rightly says, the ecosystem has a way of identifying its potential torchbearers. Scholarships were instituted in this country, whether it's Rhodes or otherwise, to find the next Brown Sahibs. Similarly, certain awards are granted to those people who carry the tradition forward in different realms, whether it's arts or otherwise. Being in the position that I am, at least over the last 8 years, I've been exposed to deeper and darker truths, which perhaps the audience may not be ready for. So allow me to say this in the most censored fashion possible. What you see in terms of topsoil is barely the truth. The truth is several layers below and several scenes behind. So if somebody has the guts to perform a particular rendition in favor of another deity of a different religion or diametrically opposite religion altogether, would that person have the guts individually unless he was absolutely sure that there is somebody else to protect him as a safety net, both financially and politically and otherwise? So, learn from Hindu history. Stop targeting foot soldiers, attack the system. Because foot soldiers are like Raktabija Rakshasas. You kill one, the ecosystem has the ability to produce 10. And when you target one person, it's easy for somebody to say this is the product of professional jealousy and rivalry. Take away that argument altogether. Attack the system, attack the idea, attack the institution by creating parallel ideas, parallel institutions, and parallel performers. If this entire movement has only a negative connotation to it, where it's constantly blaming them without offering alternatives and positive solutions, then frankly it seems like a game where people are hand-wringing without actually coming out with solutions. It's like somebody saying, I'll constantly attack the first prime minister without providing a better alternative. It doesn't work. After a point, that narrative has an expiry date. People will say, how long will you continue saying this? You've been given power. You're not the government in opposition. You're the party in power. Right? Similarly, create alternatives. Second, recognize the good that they do which you're not doing. Poor performers are being supported by them one way or the other. During COVID, they were doing it. They have come out with brilliant world-class journals to put together the tradition and to compile the tradition. You may disagree with the venomous propaganda that is being pushed through that particular journal, but the effort behind it and the commitment to it, respect it. There is no comparison to Asura Tapas, and that's what is happening there. So learn from them. How many people ask themselves what is going to be the condition of Carnatic performers during the COVID period when there are no performances to attend at all? The ones who are visible already have visibility, they can bank on it to some extent. What about the poor guys? So there are flaws here as well. We are not 100% right all the time. Nobody can be. And there is something to learn on that front. Now what they do, put yourself in the shoes of a youngster. They will say, he is the one who is actually protecting the poor man. And we guys are saying tradition, conservatism, acharya, this and that, but we are not protecting the poor man. In their minds, at that stage, it is not respect for tradition, but idealism and justice that is constantly festering in their heads because they're in that rebellious phase. That is what they're hoping to use. By diverting it to say, okay, are your gurus protecting someone who's below the poverty line and who wants to survive by performing as a full-time musician? Answer that question. I'm the one who is doing it. So where is dharma? In action or in talk? This is in action. That's it. Job done. End of the argument. So my request to this platform is as much as you must work towards protection of tradition, because that is Bija Raksha. The second limb is to make sure that you're seen as contributing to the development of the ecosystem by addressing those who are at the bottommost rung of this ecosystem as much as possible. That's what I would suggest. I am eager to listen to the performers perform. Beyond this, I don't wish to say anything. I think I've made my point. Thank you for a patient hearing. Thank you for putting this together. And this cannot suffer a soda bottle effect, where out of sight is out of mind. I've said this often before. Stop creating personality cults just because a few faces are visible, and I include myself in that. You will get tired of listening to me after a point, just as I am tired of listening to a few people now. So create more faces and make sure that the cause is always held above individuals. I don't say this from any false sense of humility. I am not a humble person. I don't need to beat around the bush on that fact. Interact with me, you'll know. All I'm saying is, I understand the sell-by date of faces. After a point, people will say, he said this over 10 different videos. How many different ways is he going to sell the same thing? So, according to me, I don't get any fun out of it. It's boring for me. And the true validation for all these efforts is when you start investing tangibly. So your only takeaway is not who said it, but what was said. That's all that matters. Thank you. Vande Mataram, Jai Shri. I want to administer the pledge. Could I request you to stand up? Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I will respect our Sanatana Dharmic and divine roots of Carnatic music. I will not support or endorse any views or actions or platforms or individuals that undermine the same. Jai Shri Ram.